One of the important functions that we ask small group leaders to do is to assess their groups. Now, this doesn't come naturally, and it may not be common in a lot of groups in other ministries, but we believe that assessment is really important because if you don't ever assess, you can't ever improve. So let's talk about the importance of assessment. Helping a group of people pursue God together requires that you evaluate and discern what the group needs to hear and what steps they need to take. And so you need to take some time to think and pray about your group as a whole so you can figure out how to help the group move forward together. Now, there's a biblical precedent for this in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. The Apostle Paul says, "When I was with you, I couldn't talk to you as I would to spiritual people. I had to talk as though you belonged to this world or as though you were infants in Christ. I had to feed you with milk, not with solid food, because you weren't ready for anything stronger. And you still aren't ready, for you are still controlled by your sinful nature. You are jealous of one another and quarrel with one another." So the Apostle Paul is sharing here his assessment of these believers in the Corinthian church. And the level of their maturity dictated his decision about how he was going to work with them, how he was going to interact with them. Now, even though the ultimate goal of every group is the same, your group's going to be unique and different from any other group. And so your assessment is going to help you know in your specific group how to tell the right truth at the right time and how to discern the steps that your group needs to take. Now, there are two areas where we assess. We assess the group members individually, and we assess the group as a whole. So let's talk about how to assess the group members. You can get a sense of what's happening in the lives of the people in your group by using the Pursue God circle and the 3 stages of growth that are defined by that circle. So some of the people in your group may still need to learn to trust in Jesus. They may need to come to salvation, or they're in the early part of their salvation. They're learning how to trust Jesus with new things in their lives. Some of your people need to learn how to honor God, and there might be particular issues that you can identify in their lives where they need to take a next step in honoring God in their life. And then there's others in your group who maybe their next step is to move on to begin to invest in other people in their lives, and so to go full circle. And so that Pursue God's circle gives you a really simple way to assess just where people are at in their pursuit of God. Where are they at on the circle? Now, let's talk about how to assess the group itself. The simplest way to evaluate the progress of your group is to use a worksheet that we've created called the Small Group Feedback Form. Now, you can see the link to that in the article below. We encourage you to get familiar with it, to download it, because what it's going to do is it's going to remind you of the long-term goals of your group and the kind of environment and the kind of relationships that you're trying to create as a group. And so it's going to ask you, there's some questions that will help you evaluate, are we creating a caring environment? Are we raising up new leaders? And so some of the key things that matter, and that will give you just a simple checklist to use from time to time. And then there's another tool called the Small Group Reproduction Plan. And if your group is healthy, then your vision will be to reproduce your group by forming another group out of it at some point. The Small Group Reproduction Plan helps keep you tracking toward that. Even if you're not near that goal now, it helps you to remember the kind of things that you need to do early to be able to reproduce later. And so we encourage you to use these tools, use them with your team to spend some time keeping your finger on the pulse of the kind of group that you want to become. Now, I realize that whenever we talk about assessment, that makes some people uncomfortable. So let's take for a minute and just think together about the purpose of assessment. The purpose of assessing your group is in order to make a plan to improve. Assessment always goes together with planning. And we have some tools, some worksheets like the team meeting planner that you can use with your team to help you make some concrete decisions together. But the point of assessment is simply to plan better ways to improve your group. It's not to call out your failures. It's not to show where people have blown it. It's not about recriminations. It's not about judgmentalism or anything like that. It's just so you can choose how to plan. Now, we suggest that you shouldn't try to improve everything at once. Just tackle one issue at a time, and every time you do an assessment, choose one area where you'd like to improve, and then identify maybe one or two action steps that you can take, delegate those, assign those to different members of your team, and then of course be sure to follow through. And so really the only purpose that we do assessment is so that we can plan to improve. Now, one last thing, that as you go about this process of evaluating your group and its members, it's really important that you let the Spirit lead. As you evaluate the group and its members and how to respond to their needs, it all really starts with prayer. So we encourage you to pray regularly for your group, both individually and together with your team. Seek God's guidance about when to take the initiative and when to wait, and which of the issues that are raised in the assessment you really need to act on first, and what steps to take, what to share, how to help. You see, we just want you to be intentional about seeking God's leading for your group so your group can be a great group. And what that means then is that you learn to practice assessment, and as you do, you let the Spirit lead.